Next order of business is roll call of members. Please indicate your presence when the machine is open. If all the members voted, tally roll.
I can just imagine it. Your phone buzzed this morning and you thought to yourself, maybe it's a notification from the Taco Bell app about a new kind of gordita. Maybe there's a new episode of Shrinking starring Jason Segel and Harrison Ford on Apple TV Plus. Or heck, maybe it's just a text message from your boss saying you're the employee of the month. But then you look and it's a notification from your favorite podcasting app that there's a new episode of Sessions. And I have to say, you're welcome. We're glad to be back. I'm still joined and unevenly yoked to my co-host, known fashionista, Earl Harris Jr. Earl, we haven't published since April. How you been?
I've been good, but you apparently just have given up. I mean, no tie, no suit coat, sleeves rolled up.
Yeah,
the new version of Sessions.
I have a 1-year-old, and I thought if I put on a suit, he's going to get something on it, blueberries and cottage cheese this morning, and it was going to be bad. So here I am, the way I normally am. So but it's good to see you, and I feel like maybe with a little bit of a break, we'll actually do a good job this time.
I'm not holding my breath on that happening, but we'll see how it goes.
You shouldn't. This is a video podcast. It'd be bad for you to do that.
It would be.
You know, today's a special day that we have a guest who hails from Miami County.
In Indiana?
In Indiana, a place of greener pastures and redder voting blocks than either of us have. He's the chairman of public policy, represents District 23, the first ever Republican to come on Sessions. It's our friend and yours, maybe, Ethan Manning. Ethan, thanks for joining us.
Gentlemen, it's so great to be with you. Very honored to be the first Republican on the podcast. I listen to a ton of podcasts, but I've never been on one. So not only being the first Republican, but this is my first podcast. It's exciting.
Well, and it's exciting for us because you're a long-time listener, first-time guest.
Yes.
Listen to every episode of Sessions.
Now, here's the hard part. Depending on how this goes, you may be the first and the last Republican on the podcast.
Well,
especially if no one else agrees to come on. Yeah, I mean, I guess
that phone call from Speaker Houston kind of kills that deal.
It can change things dramatically.
It'll be okay. We should do more things like this on the Republican side.
We agree with you.
We agree with you. Thank you.
We both should be communicating all the time.
Talk to your friends. Tell them we're nice.
Let them know. Yeah, especially Earl and I.
Yes.
Especially Earl and I. So before we jump into anything kind of like policy-wise, we've known each other for a while. We're on committee together, but I was looking at your bio and there's things I didn't know about you, right? So you are also, in addition to being a state legislator, you're a realtor. I knew that.
Yes.
You're an auctioneer.
I am.
So can we talk about that for a second? What is the day-to-day life of a legislator / auctioneer?
Lots of fast talking.
I was about to say, so you really you do the real fast.
I do.
It's
really not, anybody can do it. All you got to do is know the numbers really well, 5, 10, 15, 20, and then just add words in between. So say, would you bid 5, would you bid 10? You just do it fast. 5 would have been 10, would have been 15, would have been 20. How about 30, would have 35? Just like that.
Can you do that on the floor?
Oh, absolutely.
Can you do it about the increasing cost of vouchers?
It's really hard to get 100 million in between the words.
So you guys aren't auctioning off a lot of 100 million.
No.
Things. Okay, no. Just the future public education.
Absolutely. But it's
no, I won't do that the whole time.
Well, there's also that roads thing, too.
We do have a roads funding shortage.
Yes, we do have that.
Yeah. Okay, so auctioneer, which I just found fascinating, right? And then also a family farm. Didn't know that either.
That's right. Grew up in northern Miami County, family beef cattle farm. Still work it to this day. Grandpa runs it all the time, and then Dad as well, and my brother and I.
Now, so I grew up in the country, but we had some cows, but not.
You look like you grew up.
I know. Thank you. Yeah. Polka dot and skinny jeans gave me away. So, but my dad still has hogs, and he has, had a few cows. Doesn't do that as much anymore. But I'm imagining, are we talking pretty big farm? Is this like Yellowstone, the show?
No, not quite like maybe the Yellowstone of Miami County, if you will. So don't come on Manning Cattle Company. Right. Kevin Costner will be after you.
Yeah.
No, about 400 acres, a little over 100 brood cows. So we're a cow-calf operation, and finish some out, but sell the rest as feeders.
And this is going to be me living in the city for far too long now. So are you on a horse?
No, 4-wheelers now.
Oh, okay.
The modern day horse. The iron
modern day horse.
But you're not wearing cowboy boots.
No, I don't wear a lot of I do have some cowboy boots, but
You
I
have
have a
a
lot
big
of skinny
10-gallon hat,
jeans
too?
too, and you can't wear cowboy boots with skinny jeans. That looks
it
a
is
little strange.
It is a little weird. I've tried it for an event here or there to try to be approachable.
You got to have video for that, dude.
I want to see you in a cowboy hat.
I've tried, there's a couple spots around the state, right, where you can get really nice cowboy hats. And I did go in, and even at State Fair, right, I've tried on a few, and I was blessed and cursed with really big ears, and it just doesn't look right, frankly, on me. And I've just learned to.
You've got a great cowboy name, Lemonade Johnson. So that's, like Billy the Kid, Lemonade Johnson.
That's true.
Wyatt Earp.
You'd
Your
think I
claim to
could have
fame.
found a way. I would have found a way to make it all work. But well, listen, we are excited to have you on. We're excited to talk about some of the issues that you focused on as public policy chairman. The Public Policy Committee handles a lot of stuff, but one of the things that gets the most news is around alcohol policy. So talk about kind of taking that committee over. It's not been that long now that you've been chair. What's that experience been like?
Sure. It's only been 2 sessions. So coming into 2023 was made chairman of public policy, and I'd never been on the committee before. So, of course, I'd voted on the issues on the floor, but I'd never been on the committee and really dug deep into those. So in public policy, we cover alcohol, gaming, tobacco, and firearms, kind of our big four. So depending on your perspective, it's either the sins committee or the fun committee.
Sure.
I tend to think it's pretty fun, right?
Yeah.
We've got some interesting issues. But, the alcohol world is very interesting. A lot of these laws have basically been the same since 1933 when Prohibition ended. And so we have a 3-tier system between the manufacturers, the wholesalers, and retailers. You're not allowed to go between those tiers, and you have ownership restrictions and things like that. And a lot of, let's just say it, micromanagement, right, from the legislature and
We never do that.
agency. No, we wouldn't justify our own existence by keeping things going here. So it's a really interesting space. And then gaming, of course, great big industry in this state, almost $1 billion a year in tax revenue between our casinos and lottery revenues. And so it's an important industry as well.
Are we looking at, I want to focus on gaming if you don't mind, because I represent East Chicago, Gary, Hammond, which are all casino cities.
Right.
Any new movement coming or anything we need to look forward to down the line for gaming?
So it's been, 6 years since we've done a gaming bill. 2019 session was the last time we had a large gaming bill. We've done some stuff for charitable with accepting credit cards for raffles. And I'd like to expand on that because, in my opinion, if you can put a credit card into DraftKings and bet on the NFL, you ought to be able to give money to your local charity by doing an online raffle. So that's something we're going to continue to work on. The casino industry, which you talked about, Earl, of course, is evolving.
Yep.
And this is an industry we've now had in this state 30 years. It's a big source of tax revenue, many thousands of jobs, lots of investment. And so if there's an opportunity to allow the industry to move forward, to modernize, and to be beneficial, of course, to communities and to the state for tax revenue, then we're going to take a look at that as we move forward. Absolutely.
So in terms of the modernizing, I know iGaming is something that we've kind of danced around here for a couple of years. What are your thoughts on that, and if that's something we're going to move to?
Yeah, I've been supportive of iGaming. I've filed a bill a couple of times. Didn't last session. And
Well, you're the chairman now.
Well, that's right. Absolutely. So I think that's one important piece of the modernization. More and more people are online, and we want to make sure that they have those opportunities. It's really not new gaming. It's just a different way to do the same kind of gaming you're already doing. iGaming, for those who don't know, is just mobile. So you can play poker or slots or blackjack on your phone or on your computer. And so we do everything online now. Why not have the gaming as well? Plus, in other states, we're seeing more and more data. It's not decreasing revenues at our brick and mortar casinos. They're different customer bases.
Yeah.
And so we could see, potential 100 million plus in new revenue each year if we were to do iGaming.
We're also seeing in the states that this has been adopted, like pretty good models for gambling addiction intervention and all of that as well.
Yeah.
And actually, from my understanding thus far, on a mobile device and an app, you're actually able to kind of flag, hey, should you put this down for a little while?
Yeah.
Like, hey, you've burned through some money here, like
Don't lose
maybe
your rent
time
money.
to take a pause. And those apps allow you the opportunity to do that, where sometimes at a brick and mortar casino, that's a lot harder to accomplish.
Absolutely. The technology allows us a lot of opportunities for responsible gaming programs. And also, from a state perspective, I don't think what we have currently is adequate, even for our existing levels of gaming. There is money that goes to the Addiction Services Fund within FSSA, but that gets diverted to every addiction, right? And substance abuse and that sort of thing. And so I think we need a dedicated program for responsible gaming and problem gambling, and that ought to be funded by the industry. So that's another part of the aspects of gaming we should be talking about moving forward.
But I think we've seen some, I can speak for Northwest Indiana, I think we've seen them be good citizens in terms of giving back, being involved in the community. The other thing, even if you're not a gambler, having casinos means you have an increase in restaurants. You have shows. I mean, I just went to a show at Hard Rock a couple of weeks ago. Earlier this year, I went to a show at Horseshoe in Hammond. So it's also brought a lot of entertainment and tourism increase to the areas as well. So that's another benefit.
Yeah, I remember you were posting about being at Teletubbies Live.
I even got on stage.
How was that?
There's some video somewhere.
Again,
yay!
You know, luckily, I got to say, even with the 1-year-old, we have not gotten into Teletubbies. I'm Bluey. Has it been a thing for me? It's just been great.
You're talking to two guys living that no kids.
Yeah,
I know. That's why I'm forcing
not...
you to go through this. And Miss Rachel, just check it out on you. After you finish the episode,
she's a YouTube person.
Yeah, she's like worth like $10 million. So she's like this incredible child.
Baby shark thing? Is that still?
That's
something?
just a single video. Oh my God, this is.
There's a
You heard it here first. Starting a separate podcast on fatherhood.
See, Eliza Schlesinger, Morris Day and the Time, those are the type of shows I go see.
I've
as
seen
a
her a couple
non-father.
times.
She's hilarious.
She's awesome. Yeah.
First time I've seen her live.
We go out at night sometimes
Yes.
and see shows and go to nice dinners.
I'm in bed at 8 o'clock and we're whispering to each other about
it's
what our
good to
day
have a
is.
social life.
Yeah, I used to. I remember. It was nice. Let's talk about alcohol, which I could actually use a glass right now thinking about all this. So
it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
It is. And speaking of which, prior to your leadership on the committee, that saying actually meant nothing because there were no happy hours and there were no time-based specials and whatnot in Indiana. So if you're, maybe you're on a vacation in Florida or somewhere else and you're like, okay, well, Benninger's has got a 3 to 6 deal. So you go with your buddies, you have some wings, you have some beers. You couldn't do that in Indiana. What changed?
So this session in 2024, we passed what we call a social hour bill or happy hour. It's been called for a long time, was outlawed for about 40 years. And so if you were a restaurant or a bar in Indiana, you could do a discount on alcohol, but it had to be for the entire day. You couldn't do it from 2 to 4, 3 to 5, or 5 to 7. And so that is now legal. And there are some parameters on it. You can't have happy hour at 1 a.m. before people go home, right? It's limited to before 9 p.m., a limited number of hours per week that you have to have approved. But it is now legal, and really we did that because it's a great opportunity for our bars and restaurants. That's a very tough business, not a business I would want to be in. I know how difficult it is. I forget the stat, but a huge percentage of restaurants close in the first 5 years of being open, right? Yeah. So just the opportunity to allow them to sort of even out their business. If they can get a few more people in that downtime from 2 to 4 each day, between lunch and dinner with a happy hour special, give them that opportunity to do that responsibly.
Yeah.
So on the topic of drinking, any type of lemonade legislation we should be looking at?
That's probably my greatest disappointment in the last 6 years is what happened to the lemonade bill in the Indiana State Senate this session.
Yeah, I mean, it just is an absolute atrocity. We'll bring it back. We're going to bring it back.
Bring it back, Rep. Johnson.
We'll
support you.
Bring it back, absolutely.
Let's get big government and big lemonade out of our state.
Yes.
Right? A big lemonade is...
How many lobbyists did Minute Maid hire to fight that bill?
I know. And it must have happened behind the scenes because they never called me.
That's how it happens.
Called me.
I think there's a little kid lemonade mafia that you need to tap into.
The organized crime of lemonade stands. We don't want you guys looking at us at all. All right? We got our powder, Johnson. We got our water.
Lemonade Johnson.
We've been knocking this out. Could you speak to what was the reticence on happy hours? I mean, the deals could exist for a full day. What was the holdup here? And I've had some of those conversations with our colleagues that had some heartburn over it. But kind of what do you think was kind of holding us down on that?
Originally, they were passed around the country, and they're down to single-digit number of states that still outlaw happy hours. But the idea was people would go in, and because they had a drink special, they would drink more in a shorter amount of time and then drive home or drive to wherever they're going, and that would create problems. I looked at the data from other states where happy hours are legal, where they're not legal. There didn't seem to be any material difference in drunk driving, arrests, or deaths, or anything like that. And so I'm not sure that applied, as we looked at the data. And then, just generally the tight control that we have on alcohol is that's inertia. That's hard to slow down in the legislature. Sure. It's been that way basically 90 years. And so I think those two things combined were the biggest reason why that was there for 40 years.
I think about for Indianapolis in particular, just the amount of tourism and visitors and conventions that come in. It's also, I think, a big win for us in the regard that folks coming from all over the country, and they have an opportunity to, for these restaurants and bars to market to them and, get them in the door so they can experience some of the kind of amenities that the city has to offer. And I'm seeing them now, right? Like as I'm out and about, starting to see happy hours pop up, the Cunningham restaurant group around town, they have some going. And then, it's kind of a cool thing to have been a part of that and voted for it. So,
well, and it makes sense to, as you talked about, it's so hard to keep that type of business open, to have something that's a draw that'll help bring in more people, more revenue. And I'm going to bring the tourism thing again. As you said, tourism is a big deal. And let's make the state of Indiana and different parts of Indiana more attractive.
Yeah, and clearly popular in the legislature. I think 70 plus votes and 35 plus in the Senate, and then the media attention leading up to July 1st 100%. When it became effective. All over the state, lists of restaurants and bars doing this and what their specials would be, and so I think so far it's been a positive change.
Yeah.
So Blake and I are Democrats, which means we're on the downside of the superminority. You're the upside of the supermajority. To get into numbers, when you have a bill, as you kind of referenced earlier, you have some people who look at it as sin, and then you have people that look at it as fun. What kind of conversations or arguments are you having in terms of getting those numbers to where you need to pass legislation?
Yeah, so with public policy, I think that's one of the rare committees where there's basically no partisanship. There's really no partisan lines when you're talking about alcohol policy. And so, you'll see a few members of the Republican caucus that are just no on every alcohol bill. Doesn't matter what it says, if it's an alcohol bill or a gaming bill, they're going to be no. So you have to take that into account. That's going to be maybe half a dozen members, and then just get to 51. I don't need 75 votes. I'm happy with 51 on any bill.
Yeah.
So there's some deal making possibly for us Democrats to get some stuff done.
Yeah, well, that's the committee really is. It's interesting. I serve on two that kind of operate this way, right? So local government and public policy both, where it often feels like, well, I guess I should back up and say, and we've talked about this on the show before, that 90% of the bills that go through are bipartisan bills, right? It's that 5 to 10% that get the attention of the kind of divisions, and then obviously in a presidential election year, there's a lot more happening, a lot more moving around too that kind of plays into it. But on those two committees, it feels like our conversations are usually kind of merits of the argument. I've seen Republican bills die in committee the same way a Democrat doesn't get heard in a committee, right? So it's an interesting sort of thing. What are the, any struggles with the supermajority? What's kind of the
give us
the inside scoop about?
We won't tell anybody.
Like what it's like to maneuver through that, because it's not like you guys are monolithic by any stretch of the imagination.
Absolutely not. We have a broad range of views on lots of different issues within 70 members on our side, and so very spirited discussions both in private and in public related to those. But just math, right? You can lose a third of the caucus and still have enough votes with just Republicans alone to pass a bill.
Yeah, we know.
We'd like to change that for you. We want to make it easier.
That's both good and bad, depending on, for me, what the topic is.
Sure.
It's issue to issue. It's not necessarily, sometimes I wish we could have a few more Democrat votes on things, right?
Yeah.
And to get some things across the finish line. So it just depends on the issue, because people's districts are different too,
Sure.
right? You guys don't have a whole lot of rural members in your caucus now, largely in the urban areas and suburban areas, where we've got people from urban and rural and suburban areas. And so that is a little more tension as well.
Sure.
Just representing different types of districts. And so it's always an interesting discussion. Things don't always go your way, even in the supermajority.
We still would like to know.
Refreshing to hear. Refreshing to hear. When you all get together and you talk about your favorite Democrats, who is on that list?
Well, my favorite Democrat is my wife, Bridget. Okay, so
Nice.
that's number one.
Well played.
Yes,
Ethan.
Ethan, husband of the year.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, we try. And then, gosh, I don't know that
we come up.
say.
Yeah,
It's
no, we don't even
we
come
actually
up.
don't.
No, you
what
come
are
up.
your names again?
Yeah.
Well,
I thought Sheila Clinker was going to be here.
That's right.
I can tell you, both of you are extremely well liked in the Republican caucus.
Yeah, well, there goes our election.
Yeah. Hopefully
But
that
you
means
fight
the podcast
very hard
is
for
going.
your constituents.
Well,
your
and
points
this
of-
is
Thank
I think, honestly, one of the reasons I think Earl and I are even doing this, right, is that, we believe that there are necessary and important fights where you have to like go all in and fight as hard as you can. But also the nature of service sometimes is being able to compartmentalize that a little bit and work together on the places you can work on things.
Yeah.
And that, you and I have sparred on different issues, like ESG legislation. We don't have to go into the details of it, right? Like, but where we were on opposite sides there, fought pretty hard on the floor even, and, put up a fight against you. And you find a way to like, I disagree with you on that and a number of other things, and you still find a way to work together where you can and be friendly and recognize that hopefully at your core, amongst the 100 of us, everyone wants the state to do better. And we just have different ideas about how we get there, and I would argue sometimes who gets there, but like that's just sort of how it plays out, right?
Well, and there's the whole theory of no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, because you can be against each other on one bill, walk into another committee or have that bill on the floor, and you're on each other's side.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of times people in the public forget it's not just this. There's a lot of camaraderie that works.
Absolutely.
I know we're running close on time, but we've talked about you in terms of your taking over this new role for the last 2 years, and you're a House member. How is this working out with you working with the Senate side?
Working out well so far. I mean, we collaborated, of course, on some of the bigger bills. We didn't talk about DORAs, designated outdoor refreshment areas.
Let's do that. Can we?
Yeah,
I want
fine.
to. You come back to the Senate here when you wrap it up, but let's talk about doors because this is a big deal.
Yes.
Cities are starting to take advantage of it. It's not yet in Indianapolis. That was in the IBJ this week about one portion of the city working on it. So talk about doors really quickly. What are they, and why is this going to benefit municipalities?
So talking about the Senate, this is a bill that passed the Senate a couple of times and hadn't gone anywhere in the House. And so in the 23 session, we passed this. And so a city, and it's totally local control, which is the whole idea. If a city does not want to do this, they don't have to, and they set the parameters, they set the geographic area, but essentially you are permitted to carry an alcoholic beverage outside, right? So Mass Avenue here in Indy looks like they're looking at a DORA, which would be awesome, right? Just thinking about that corridor there with all those bars and restaurants. And so you can walk out of Almost Famous and go down to Mass Ave Pub or anywhere and carry your drink outside without fear of being arrested or cited or anything like that, because it's permitted within that area. And there are rules, some people will require bracelets or special cups that are labeled, and they have to have the area clearly defined by signage. And so this is something, I think about 20 communities have been approved for a DORA now from ATC, and it's growing across the state. I see more proposals, basically weekly.
I was just in Fort Wayne for the 60th birthday party of Phil Giaquinta, and they got DORAs there in Fort Wayne, or a DORA downtown, and it was the first time I'd actually seen it in action, right? Where, like you said, there's a sign with a map on it showing you where you can be. DORA trash cans, where like this is where you throw your cup. DORA cups. The restaurants that were participating in bars and retailers had the DORA sign. And so it's even set up right where I can take my drink from somewhere, and if there's a retail place that's participating, I can walk into that retail establishment.
Unless they don't want you to.
Unless
they
they're not
can choose
including.
not to participate.
Unless they're not participating, right?
So
But
lots of local
really
control.
kind of a cool thing to get people out exploring their communities as well, and not being kind of confined to
great
one
quality
location.
of life. People like to drink outside, and
Yeah.
sometimes you have to give the people what they want.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, you
Sometimes.
thought Dora was Dora the Explorer.
I mean, when
based
it was on the sheet
Bluey
for our
and Miss
questions,
Rachel.
I was...
It's the dad
we,
thing.
We did
Yeah.
have to clarify that for
Yeah,
you, Representative.
I voted for Dora the Explorer, and now there's people drinking outside. I don't know what to do about it.
It worked out well.
Yeah. Ethan, now, how long have you been in the legislature total now?
The 6 years.
Okay, 6 years. So as we wrap up, Earl was mentioning that we really would like to stop this conversation. What's kind of your
I was giving you a time
reflections-
cue, dude.
What are your reflections on the job?
Hey, Blake, you
And-
forgot my Senate question.
Oh,
You cut
shoot.
off.
Working with the Senate?
Yes.
Well, I brought up Doors as an example of how the Senate had passed something for a number of years and the House hadn't pursued that. And so now we're much more collaborative, I think.
Yep.
There's always going to be bumps in the road as you change chairmen in various committees and have different perspectives on issues. And so you just work through those. And just like across the aisle, you have to work across the rotunda with the Senate. And sometimes they have different ideas. That's okay. That's the process. That's why we have 2 chambers.
Correct.
Look at Nebraska with a unicameral. People complain there because they can't fix anything, right? They have to have every bill perfect because it only goes through 1 chamber. You can't say, oh, we'll keep it going and we'll do an amendment on the other side. So I think it's a good system, and we have to work within it.
So Indiana's doing it right.
I think we do. Going to CSG and NCSL and all these other things, and you hear about some of the crazy things in other states, even some of their, just basic process in their legislature. North Dakota, I think they vote on every single bill. Every bill filed gets a committee hearing and a vote. I mean, can you imagine doing that with 1,000 bills that we get filed? Maybe you guys
Sounds
would
pretty
like
good to
that.
us right
Yeah,
now.
I know. More bills would be great.
From the majority perspective, that'd be a nightmare, right? So I do think overall we do it right in Indiana.
Back to my question in closing.
Oh, thank you for letting me ask one.
On the next episode, I'm going to sit silently.
Unequally yoked here.
Well, we're on the committee together.
I'm sorry. You have bond.
Yeah, we
like
bonded
that.
over issues of sin.
And Dora the Explorer.
Yeah,
and
beer
lemonade.
cheese, yeah.
Lemonade.
Had my back on
What
beer
else?
cheese.
Yeah.
It was great.
We need to get you on public policy.
Yeah, what are
I'm
we
here.
doing? What are we doing?
You're
We
from
can
a
sign that.
gaming community.
I am. I think that would work great.
We need you.
Hey, listen.
You should have talked to Phil at that 60th birthday
That's
party.
right.
He
Phil's
didn't know who I
60.
was.
He didn't know.
There's not a gray hair on his head for 60 years old.
It's me, Blake Johnson from Indy. No,
I'm
he was
one of
wonderful. It
your
was a wonderful
caucus.
party, wonderful celebration. I do want to. I want to hear you say, just your thoughts in closing on just the job. As a cowboy, auctioneer, legislator, realtor. Okay.
Oh, another bonding thing for you two, the realtor thing.
Yeah. Well,
the cowboy thing.
I'm married up. What can I say?
We know.
Me too.
What's just kind of your reflections on these 6 years in the gig and what you've thought about it?
I honestly think the state legislature is the best job in politics because, and again, Indiana doing it right, a part-time legislature where we all have other jobs, we have other experiences, and we live in our communities when we're not in session, but having that balance between the real world and then government, which is not always the real world, right? We get so focused on what happens inside the limestone box, as I call the state house, we forget the impacts of the decisions we make on the real world. And so to go back home and do that, I think that makes it the best job in politics. And so it has its challenges, right? Every job has its days. Something doesn't go your way in committee or on the floor, or you have a constituent unhappy about something. But overall, it's a great job. The thing I enjoy most is constituent services. So helping people with their Medicaid. They've had a problem, an issue. It could be very simple, or it could be something that requires a 25-page bill, right? Depending on the problem that the constituent is having. But just the ability to have some influence to solve problems that other people can't solve just by being in this position is a great honor.
You hit on something that I've been doing different town halls and different community meetings. And I tell people, we live in our communities. Sometimes people think we don't come, but we live in our communities. And as much as people, or we'd like to think we're geniuses and come up with all the ideas for legislation on our own, we get a lot of them from feedback, from talking to, whether it's a town hall or whether it's at the gym or the grocery store or whatever conversations we're having. We're with people that we represent, and by having it this way, we make sure that we do our best for them and give people what they want and find out what their needs are so we can take care of them.
You think I'm capable of lemonade stands and beer cheese on my own? Of course not.
No, you need Republicans.
It was the Lemonade Mafia. Yeah, that too.
I didn't need that too. So. Hey, well, I think you survived as the first Republican.
This was awesome.
That'll be
Report back.
Report back through the chain of command on that tower you all live in, that it was just fine coming on the show. Thanks, everybody, for tuning back in. Thanks for answering the call of the push notification on your phone and giving us a listen and a view. Subscribe if you haven't already done so. Leave a comment. I mean, let's start to really do this right. We're kind of in this together now. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.